webinar will be of 45 minutes and the last 15 minutes are reserved for questions. Kindly type your questions in the chat box. I, Prachi, will take them up and sir can answer it in the end. So over to you, Pattu sir.
Thank you, Gaurav. Good evening, everyone. So I work at IIT Madras, and which is also a central government institution. And perhaps Gaurav may not know that I had spent a couple of years after my PhD in the Indira Gandhi Center for Atomic Research, which comes under the Department of Atomic Energy. So I have some understanding of life in national lab, and I've tried to inculcate some of these elements into the talk, and also Gaurav had helped me understand more about the benefits that you have. So in common sense approach to managing money, what I want to do is to talk about why it's everything associated with investing and protecting our loved ones is based on common sense. So, as you know, money plays a huge role in our life. All our dreams depend on money in one way or the other, directly or indirectly. But if you stop and think, if we really give it the respect that it deserves, uh, you recognize that a lot more can be done, and that's what we're going to talk about. And this is a question I ask in every corporate meet I go, and typically my audience for this kind of talk is people from the software industry, and there the age group can vary quite a bit. But if I meet a younger audience, for example, somewhere below 35, and if I ask them when does your month end, that means if you receive your salary, let's say on the first of every month, after how many days does it does things become difficult and you look forward to the next month? And believe it or not, I have had answers like my month ends 15 days, my month ends 10 days after getting my salary, and one guy actually said my month ends 5 days after getting my salary. So this is a huge problem where we have to balance our needs, our wants, our debts, our investments. And if you are salaried, what essentially happens is you are kind of stuck in this this machine, and you just stand, you are running, but you kind of stand in the same place. And especially people in the national labs, people working in the national labs, or people working in let's say IITs and so on, I mean, they get a lot of respect. If you go and tell your relatives that you are going to work in ISRO, they'll say, "Wow, that's a lot. That's a great thing." But salaries are not commensurate to that kind of respect. That's true for every government department, and that's a fact. So the point is that if you don't manage your money right, on an already your salary is not that great, and now with the pandemic and so on, the government has already stopped DA for the next couple of years, and definitely the next pay commission, that's going to get delayed by at least a couple of years at least, because even without any pandemic, getting pay commissions on time is a big problem. And now you can imagine your salaries are only going to increase by just that standard 3% increment and so on. So the aim should be for us who are salaried is to somehow find a way to get out of this this cycle of working hard, waiting for the next month's salary, spending it all, waiting for the next month's salary, and so on. And that's so I'm going to talk about a framework in which you can get out of this dependence of waiting for the next month's salary. So you might have seen images like this circulated on WhatsApp, and that's the Ambani wedding. And there are a lot. You'd see a lot of comments on social media when you see images like this. They would say they are wasting money and so on. The fact is that the Ambani, the Ambanis have so much money that they can build 100 houses like that, or they can conduct 1,000 marriages like that. But for us to conduct and stand as a normal marriage by by average standards would take probably a lifetime of savings. So uh, they are not wasting money, it is us who are wasting money. So before we begin, a very generic definition on how much money is enough. Now, money has only one objective. Money is there only to get spent. You are not going to get anything if you just hold on money, save it, and never spend it. That's just meaningless, right? Money has only one objective. It has to be spent. But how much money is enough? If we are able to manage every kind of expected and unexpected expenses that we encounter in our life until we die, then we have enough money. So we need to create a framework for managing both expected and unexpected expenses. Now many people tend to think that if once you get a couple of promotion, then they're rich, and they have so much more excess money. For example, I'm not sure how the structure is in ISRO, but in Kalpakam we had something called a scientist C, a scientist D, then it goes all the way to E, then you have F, outstanding scientist, distinguished scientist, and so on. I think here in ISRO you should have probably scientist slash engineer, kind of that kind of a grading. I don't recall, but
Yes, sir, it's the same. It's the
yeah,
same here.
right. So the thing is that, so a guy who is in a SOC or a SOD designation will think, okay, maybe the guy who is in SOF, he's got a lot more money than me, he's more richer. Actually, that's not true. It doesn't. You can get 20,000 rupees a month, you can get 20 lakhs a month. How you manage your money is very important, where you spend it is very important. The actual amount of money you get doesn't matter, because everything depends on your spending habits, how your expenses increase every year, how you add new expenses. Because what happens is that when you get a single promotion, you think that your life has changed, and you think you have gone to some other level or next level, and you bring in new additional expenses. You buy a bigger car, you buy a bigger television, so, and bigger mobile, things like that. And where how we invest our money and how we handle unexpected expenses, that's all that matters. The pay grade doesn't matter. So our ultimate goal for any person who is salaried is, people like you once you join the organization, you will have your entire week, 5 days, 6 days, or 5.5 days would get spent in research, in development. So you would have barely enough time to actually worry about investing or managing wealth and so on. So what is the ultimate goal? How can we protect our loved ones? How can we achieve our dreams, so that we focus on our job, we focus on our time, whatever little time is free for us, we have to enjoy that time, we have to spend it with our family, we have to take care of our health. And while we do all that, we just need to let money management on autopilot, and that's what we're going to talk about. So it's all about balancing today and tomorrow. If you ask any young guy today, they will say, why should I worry about planning, investment planning today? I want to enjoy my money. I want to enjoy my salary. Yes, you should enjoy your salary. Money is there only for enjoying, but take a small slice of it and put it away for tomorrow, so that you can continue enjoying tomorrow as well. Why should the party stop tomorrow when you become old? The party should never stop until until your lifetime is over. You can enjoy partying, and that's the whole point. So there are three takeaways from this session, and the first is that if you ask wrong questions, you are guaranteed to never get the right answer. Wrong questions like, where should I invest to save tax? What should be the best option? What should be the option that will give me the best returns? Which pension plan should I invest? And you would come under the new pension scheme or the national pension scheme. When I joined, it was called the new pension scheme. Now it's called the national pension scheme, because it's no longer new. Uh, I'll show you my returns from the NPS, and I'll also talk about why that's not enough for you to to retire on, although it's a fantastic product. The second takeaway is to have some kind of a protective structure, a moat, as you would say. As you, if a castle would have something called a moat. So right there at that doll is right here. That is our family, our loved ones, and protect our family with several layers of safeguards, and working in a central government organization, you already have several safeguards available. Many of us often don't appreciate the benefits that we get when we are working in the center in a central government environment. You just need to go and talk to people in corporate, and then you would appreciate how much more secure our jobs are, especially in a time like this. The third takeaway is that uh, if you ask any salaried guy today, any middle class salaried guy, and they would say, I want, if you give me 1 crore, I will retire. That's it. I will just quit my job. I'll put my feet up, and that's it. My life is going to be happy, happy, happy from now on. That's actually not true. I'm going to show you that becoming a crorepati is no longer a dream. It's not a fantasy. It is a necessity. And why everybody should be a, not just a crorepati, a multi crorepati. That's something that I keep talking about in my YouTube channel if you were to watch it. So Gaurav said that some in the audience are freshers who are just about to join, or who have just joined in the last few months. If you are less than a year old in terms of experience, then life is very simple for you as long as you don't complicate it too much. Take 20% of your take home pay, put it into another bank account for 6 months. That's your, that 20% is going to be your emergency cash. Let's say your bike breaks down, or you took your mobile into the toilet and flushed it away, so you need a new mobile and so on. So you need that 20% as a buffer to handle unexpected expenses. Rest of the money you enjoy for 6 months. You enjoy, once you enjoy for 6 months without any restrictions, you'll get tired of it. Then after that, after the initial euphoria of earning money is kind of subsided, after that you can probably reduce that 20% that you're putting into another bank account. I said another bank account because if it is in the salary account, you will spend it. That's normal for everybody. So you just put it someplace else, and you can reduce it to 10% after 6 months. Then you think about what you want to do. Suppose you want to buy a new DSLR, you want to buy a new iPhone, iPad, iWatch, whatever. You want to take a small holiday whenever that is possible. You want to buy a new bike, something like that. You start saving for that, and you start saving for that for the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever. You start saving for that. That's your goal. Once you start saving, where do you save? Just put it in a FD or RD. Everybody knows about fixed deposits, recurring deposits. Don't do complex investments. For small things like this, just put it in there. Don't worry about interest rates being low and so on. Just put it in there. Accumulate enough money, buy yourself all this, and then you'll feel accomplished. You'll feel a little bit of joy. After all that is over, then you continue that 10% that you're putting away for as an emergency cash somewhere else. And let us say your NPS total contribution, that is the contribution from the employer as well as the employee, as an example, is just 5,000 rupees total contribution. You match that contribution, you take another 5,000 rupees, whatever. If your NPS contribution is X, you take another X from your take home pay and put it into an index mutual fund, equity index mutual fund, let us say tracking the Sensex or the Nifty. That is all. I want you to appreciate for a moment that the NPS is a fantastic scheme for central government employees, because you have 10% deducted from the salary. And the employer is giving you 12%. It was initially only 10%. Now they are giving 12%, if I'm not wrong. And that 12% has got practically unlimited tax benefits, because your employee contribution will be limited up to 1.5 lakhs under ATC. But the employer contribution, that is the ISRO's contribution, would be unlimited practically for all cadres. As far as I can tell, I have never seen. I have been contributing in the NPS for the last 12 years now, and I have never seen it hit the barrier. So it's fantastic pension product. There is a strong. You might have seen there is a strong disagreement to the NPS among central government unions, central government associations, and so on. Those people are ignorant. I'm very sorry to say. NPS is a fantastic product. It is a game changer product for people in the central government. It is not enough, but it is a game-changing product. Now, one question I get asked by young earners, and I let this slide in. I don't know this audience, and unfortunately, a problem with this online meeting is it's not easy for me to appreciate audience aspirations when I present like this. In fact, there is one company in Bangalore that invited me all the way to Bangalore. They got me plane tickets and everything just to find out the answer to this question. They have a lot of money to spare, so they wanted to know, those employees want to know if it's okay to buy the latest iPhone on EMI. The problem with mobile phones or any other electronic gadget is it is very fragile. It's a depreciating asset. That is, the moment the person in the store or the Amazon delivery guy has handed it to you, the value drops by 15%. So every year it drops by 15%, and then if you drop it, then it will crack, and you have to buy it again, and so on. So the value of that asset is depreciating, it is decreasing every year. So for that kind of asset, really buying it on EMI, paying 10%, 12% interest rates, it's just not wise. If you do want to buy, save up enough money and buy it. That's probably the simple suggestion that I can give in that respect. Then there's something that everybody has to appreciate is that debt can decide how rich you are. Now, some of you may have education loans. I'm not sure. If you have it, then focus on getting rid of that as soon as possible. Don't take any kind of debt, credit card debt, personal loans, unless the well-being of your family depends on it. Please avoid any kind of debt for 5 years after, at least for 5 years after you start working. And like I said, avoid debt for depreciating assets. And being in the ISRO setup, the beauty is you have living quarters, you have wonderful living quarters. Most of you don't have to worry about buying a home until you are like close to retirement, and when you have to vacate the quarters, you don't have to worry buying a home. But then there may be some people who want to buy a home for their parents, or the some people, relatives will start pressurizing, hey, you have started working in a big organization like ISRO and you're not even buying a home. How is this? You have to start, you have to get it, and so on. So there will be some kind of familial pressure to buy. My suggestion is, please don't get into that urge to start a home loan EMI. Whether that home loan is for somebody to live in, or whether you want to think of it as an investment. Please wait until you get some kind of balance in life, until you look at your long-term goals, when your investments are already in place. After that, if you get a home loan, it would be better. Whatever it is, whether you are paying EMI or not, your investments should not get disturbed, and we're going to talk about what investments you need to do.
Excuse me, sir. Your screen got invisible. I think it stopped sharing. Can you share again?
Yeah.
Just wait a minute. I'll make you the presenter. Yeah, I think you can share now.
Can you see it?
Yeah, it's visible. Yeah.
So whatever it is, whether if you have to pay some EMIs, please don't disturb your investments. And we're going to talk about how much minimum you need to invest. Now, if you were to go to freefincal.com, if on the main menu there is a menu item called free ebooks. There are some 6 or 7 ebooks that you can download. One of them is called Reassemble. This is a step-by-step guide for you to start managing your money, and this is for absolute beginners. It's a free PDF which you can download from there. And if you are fairly an experienced person and in the organization, and if you think that going forward you may not have enough time to manage your own money, to be a DIY investor, even though you in the past you may have been a DIY investor because of work pressure, if you think that it would be better if you outsource it, then I am a co-founder in an organization called Fee Only India. So this is a group of professionals spread across the country, and They are not affiliated with any mutual funds or insurance. They will not sell you any products. They will not get any commission from any products. They will work to get a financial plan tailor made for your requirements, and they will get a fee in exchange for that, and they are registered with SEBI as investment advisors. So this is something that is suitable for anybody, even if you're a fresher. If you say, look, I don't know where to start, everything is confusing for me, you can engage one of them for 1 year, just get started, and then you can manage later on. So it's up to you. There are several things possible, so this is an option that you have. And again, in the main menu of FreeFinCal, you can click on the get unbiased advice to navigate to the list of such people. For people who have not seen my face, that's me. So this is the framework that I talked about, and as employees in ISRO, Gaurav told me you have two schemes called VAST, which is a life insurance, and you also have a critical illness cover, and you also have an accident cover. But what I would recommend is, while VAST and Safe is they are fantastic for you, take your annual salary, multiply it by anywhere between 15 to 20 times. 15 to 20 times of your annual income should be your life insurance. You should have a life insurance cover anywhere between 15 to 20 times. So let us say that 15 to 20 times your annual income is, let's say, 1 crore, just as an example. If VAST gives you, let's say, 10 lakhs, then it is better for you to buy a life insurance product called term life insurance, which is a very basic life insurance for 90 lakhs or 1 lakh. And if you're young, you should be able to get it dirt cheap. It's for 1 crore, you just need to pay like 3,000 4,000 rupees premium per year, and that premium will be constant for your life. So that would be the first thing that you need to do. The second thing is the emergency fund that I talked about. I said take 10% of your salary and put it away somewhere else. Just put it into another bank account, or if you're familiar with mutual funds, you can use a liquid mutual fund for it. There's not a problem. And as regards health insurance, you are part of the CGHS scheme, which is the best health insurance policy in the country is the CGHS scheme. There can be no doubt about it. But what I would recommend is you talk to people in your division, in your department or section, and find out how many of them have actually utilized the CGHS scheme for a external hospitalization. That is, you will probably have a hospital in your township that will take care of basic needs. But for more advanced situations, you will have to use the CGHS scheme and get hospitalized elsewhere. Somebody in your organization should have done it. So my suggestion is, you can form some kind of a group among friends and talk about money management on the in your township, and invite the person who has used this CGHS once or twice in their service, and talk about how to use the CGHS. Because whenever you need health insurance, typically it could be an emergency. Then at that time you will not have you will not be you will not be able to think logically. At that time you may remember the advice that person has given you. So this is something that I tell organizations: always ask somebody who has utilized the health insurance available, and let them give you an account of what they did. I had this problem, I went to this department, filled this form, I got this done. If they tell you that, then when you yourself, God willing, you don't have to, but if necessary, it would help you in the time of need. Then the next step is to consider your short-term goals. That is, what are your annual expenses? For example, you may have a car insurance premium to pay. You may have any kind of annual memberships to pay. If you have children, obviously the school fees would become an annual expense. You may have insurance premiums to pay. Take all this into account, and you just need to put that money into a recurring deposit. You can buy, for example, if the annual let's say, for example, if you have children, I'm not everybody in the audience may have, but I'm sure even if you don't, may in future, let's say your school fee is or the payment deadline for school fee is in April every year, you can start a recurring deposit that matures in March every year. So 12 months you pay a recurring deposit. If it matures in March, you take the maturity amount and pay the school fee. So something simple. You don't need any complex products for this. Keep your life very simple. Don't worry about interest rates, getting more returns and so on, because it's a short term goal. It doesn't matter. So that's done. So these four steps, if you can do it, let's say if you can consider and study the features in your health insurance, get yourself a term life insurance, find out where you will put your emergency fund and start adding to it, and then you list your short term goals and prepare for it, then most of your money management is already done. That's your four steps. Then you can focus. These are one time efforts. You don't need to worry about it after you have done. So you can give 1 week for each, and after 1 month this can be done, and then you can start worrying about your long term goals, which requires management, and at least once a year. So before you begin talking about long term goals, it is extremely important to understand what you should not do. Please don't go to a bank unless it is absolutely necessary. Don't talk to any sales guy, and don't ask where to invest to a sales guy. And every family will have some sales guy selling insurance or mutual funds. Just say 3 words to them: no, thank you. They will come and say, you have started working in ISRO. You must have got a new increment. You must have got a DA this month, whatever. Please buy this new policy. Say, no, thank you. Your bank relationship manager will call you and say, sir, we have this new policy. No, thank you. Because all these are unsuitable for you. Stay away from all these entities. And the moment you start earning more than 1 lakh a month, you will become the prime target for mis-selling. Bankers, agents, they will give you all sort of products. They will say invest in PMS, you can invest in alternative investments. Then you will, like Gaurav said, if you have a demat account, somebody will buy your mobile number and call you from Indore saying, I have stock tips for you and so on. uh, Please avoid all of that. Block all these numbers. There is no next level. Money management is the same. Some people think that, oh, from now on my salary has become 2 lakhs a month, I have now reached the next level, I want to do, I need to invest differently. No, there's no such thing. Whether your salary is 2000 rupees a month or 20 lakhs a month, the basics are the same. The way you invest is the same. And if you are married or if you have a partner, it's extremely important for you to talk to your spouse, and keep them aware of what you're going to do. You must talk about your goals, dreams. That's nightmares. I just wrote night there. I forgot the mares. What are your goals, dreams? What are your worst fears? Everything should be talked about. You must have some kind of a document where you write down your plans, and how you are going to accomplish every plan. And what you can do is, if your spouse is also earning, what you can do is better to keep the investment separate. So your money you will invest somewhere, and your spouse will be the second holder in that investment. Your spouse will take her money or his money, invest it somewhere. You will be the second holder in that investment. That way you have kept everything separate, but you're also, it's legally there is a second holder option in everything. It's easier that way. And always have some trusted person. That is, you should tell your spouse, or your spouse should tell you that, look, we are doing money management on our own. In case one of us is not able to handle it, for example, suddenly you get a promotion, let's say, and your job becomes super busy, you are not able to think about your money, then you can get advice from a trusted person. This trusted person can be a SEBI registered investment advisor, like I mentioned a couple of slides back. Also, your will is very important for, maybe not for you if you're young, but your parents may have 2 or 3 children, and your parents may not have a will, and they may have a couple of properties, they may have a few fixed deposits here and there and so on. So you should go and talk to your parents and urge them to write a will. Very gently tell them to write a will. In India, if you ask people to write a will, they take it wrongly. but it has to be done gently, because if the parents die or one of the parents die, then money matters can be troublesome if there are multiple children. Then list of things to avoid. Don't worry about saving tax. You in NPS you have most of the tax saved, and after one or two promotions, you don't even need to worry about this ATC business. And please recognize, in the new tax regime, we have a new tax regime where you can opt for no tax saving, and except the employer tax saving, you will not have any ATC if you benefit if you opt that, which is life will become very simple for you. I'm not saying you should opt that, but I'm just saying that's a choice. Then avoid all kinds of packaged products, retirement plan, endowment plan, child policy, and all kinds of insurance policies which give you returns. They will only give you very small returns, and you have to pay a very huge premium for them. Please avoid investing in chit funds. Don't invest in real estate. I'll talk about that in the next slide. Don't invest in gold. You can buy gold for your spouse and make them happy, but don't invest in gold. It's just too risky. Don't engage yourself in all this fancy peer-to-peer lending, cryptocurrencies, day trading, algo trading, and so on. They're very, very dangerous. It's more like it's another way of running in the same place. Of course, there are some people who are experts in it. I'm not commenting on them, but you look at the expert. The expert would say, "Oh, I made 50,000 rupees in day trading last month." You look at that and say, "Oh, maybe I should also do that," and then it becomes a very dangerous situation. So you have to be very careful with that. The other problem is that many people don't know what to do with money, and the money sleeps in bank deposits. That's a very dangerous thing, especially when there are, when both partners are earning. That should not happen, and you should mobilize as much of your money actively as possible. Credit cards can be useful, but it's important not to misuse them. Like I already said, EMI should not be too much. So real estate is a very dangerous investment. Please recognize that India has gone through a bull run, or I should say a bubble in real estate. Prices have kept on increasing, but now things are changing. Already, many builders are facing the heat. They are not able to sell apartments. Many flats are vacant. That is, people buy the flats and they are not able to get tenants for it, or people are not even buying the flats. Either way, the flat is vacant. And the real estate is a very non-transparent thing, because if you buy one share in the NSE or BSE, that's the price everywhere. You don't have to worry about there's no haggling in real estate. Whoever you ask will tell you one price, and it depends on what you know about it, how much black money, how much white money, all sort of underhand dealings go on in there. It's very difficult, and the person who does not understand the product will get cheated royally. So please be careful. And one big problem with real estate is, if people buy shares, they are very happy to sell it and make profits from it. But you people get emotionally attached to real estate, and they're not able to freely sell it. And there are many such problems with it. Maintenance is the problem. There are legal issues and so on, and nobody knows the actual return. They just say, my uncle got 3 times gain, my auntie got this, and so on. That kind of anecdotal evidence only exists and is very dangerous. And this may or may not be relevant to you. If you are in your quarters, you may not be thinking too much about buying a house now, but this is maybe towards the end of your career, assuming you stay in a quarter all through your career. Maybe towards the last decade of your journey in ISRO, you can think about investing in a retirement home, and where you can spend your retirement. So that's something that you can think about, and you can actually start investing for that. So let's now talk about long-term investments, and this would be I have about last 10-15 slides. One question I always ask is that, what was the price of chai when you first had it on the road in your life? And this is when I get the age of the audience indirectly, because people would say 1 rupee, 2 rupees, 50 paisa, 25 paisa, then you know how old the person is. So in 1990, you could have had a cup of chai, even in a place like Bombay, for 1 rupee. So let us say you have 2 rupees with you in 1990, and you buy with 1 rupee, you buy a cup of chai, and you say, I want to take this another 1 rupee and I want to invest my money. And after after 30 years, I want to take that money out, and in 2020 I want to buy myself a cup of tea with that money. Today a cup of tea would be anywhere between 10 rupees to 12 rupees. Before the pandemic and everything, it was 10 rupees, I think. Now now it would be 12 rupees. So recognize that what was costing 1 rupee in 1990 is now costing 12 rupees. So if you were to remove your investment, pay the tax on that investment, and buy a cup of chai on the road with your investment made in 1990, that money has to be at least 12 rupees, or the return from your investment should be anywhere between 11 to 13%. The year on year your investment should be 11 to 13%. You would not get that kind of returns anywhere now. Imagine what is the ppf rate, what is the small scaling rate, and so on. So the inflation is a very very big evil in our lives, and we have to appreciate it. If you project the calculation today, let us say the cup of chai is 10 rupees today, the roadside tea is 10 rupees, and you have 20 rupees with you, and 10 rupees you drink one cup of chai, and you want to invest another 10 rupees. After 20 years, assuming about 10% year on year inflation, in 20 years you have to give 60 rupees for a cup of chai on the road. So if you say I want to invest 10 rupees today, then you must get a return of at least 10% after tax. And where will you get 10% return after tax? You have to take risk. You cannot get it from fixed deposits. You cannot get it from safe products. You have to you have to take some kind of market risk, typically stock market risk. If you tell yourself, look, I don't want all the stock market business, it's all very risky, I'm going to invest in safe products, then the price you have to pay is you have to invest 80% more. You have to invest 18 rupees today at about 7% return for it to become 60 rupees after 20 years. So that's the price. If you say I don't want to take any kind of risk, then you have to invest more, and most of us don't have that much money. How many of us will have 80% extra money to invest just because we don't want to take risk? So there is really not much of a choice. If inflation is so much in our lives, in order to beat that inflation or keep pace with that inflation, we have to take on some kind of investment risk. And if you had 1000 rupees in 1980, that money would have devalued because of inflation, and it would be about 68 rupees in 2019 when I made this slide, and in 2020 it is 66 rupees. So, or put in another way, if some product was costing 66 rupees in 1980, today it will be 1000 rupees. So that is the big problem of inflation. And please recognize, this is government reported inflation, which is like 5 or 6% every year increasing. If you actually calculate your personal expenses, your actual inflation would be much higher than this, and it would be something like 8%, 10%, depending on your lifestyle. So what you see here is my family's inflation between January 1995 to about May 2016 or so on. And we are kind of a useless family. We don't go out and eat out. We don't go to malls. Of course, in those times there are not much of malls. Maybe in the last 10 years there are some malls. During this time we did not have any mobile phone kind of thing, or not much of internet expenses. Even then, realize that for normal day-to-day living, you can see the inflation is about 8%. You can see the vegetable inflation is 11%. In India, if it rains too much, vegetable prices increase. If it does not rain, vegetable prices increase. Whatever happens, vegetable price increase. And look at the paid help inflation, the electricity inflation, the petrol inflation. They're all very, very high. And this is a big problem. Notice, you would have read in the papers that inflation is now increasing again. So now it's going to be again, inflation will increase. We will not have enough money to handle the expenses. Slowly, the government will be forced to increase the interest rates one more time, and so on. There will be a cycle there. So please recognize that personal inflation for an ordinary family without any fancy expenses is minimum 8%. So what I'm trying to say is that your investment over next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, the overall total return from your investment after all the tax should be at least 9%, so that you can beat this inflation. Otherwise, you will not be able to buy today's products tomorrow. And that's where it's very important to have this distinction between saving and investing. When you are saving, you are investing in a FD or an RD or a LIC policy, or sometimes even in gold schemes and so on. But these will not give you much of a return. It will be about 5 to 7%. It will be lower than inflation. The amount you invested will be safe, meaning that if you put 10,000 rupees, it will be 10,000 rupees in value. In actually, that is on paper value after 10 years will be 10,000 rupees. But what you get, what you can buy with 10,000 rupees after 10 years would be much, much less because of the effect of inflation. So you need to take on some risk, and a very transparent way to take that risk is the stock market, where you can, with some effort, at least expect about 10% return. The amount you invest will be fluctuating every day. For example, the market crashed in March, but if you if your basics are in place and if you are do minimal management, you should be able to beat inflation over the long term. So most of us have no other alternative except to invest our money in a portfolio like this, where we can get about 10 to 11% return. About 60% of it has to be in stocks. That is, it can be equity, mutual funds, or index fund is enough. You can invest directly in stocks. Don't count trading. Trading is not an investment, because because you are quickly booking gains and so on. So you have to be careful when you're trading. And the NPS that you have, you will be having a government NPS asset allocation of 15% equity, and the rest of it will be, most of it will be in government bonds. That is a fantastic asset allocation. Please don't change it. You can change it, please don't change it. Whatever is the default asset allocation, just leave it. That is your fixed income, the blue segment. The red is your stocks that you have to invest separately. Most of us have this assumption that the stock market is gambling, stock market is risky, and so on. But we take risk with our lives every day on the road. You just stand on the road, within 1 minute there will be 10 traffic offenders. But if you ask any of them, they will say, "I will not put my money in stock market because it's too risky." It's just baffling logic. So we have to be for a long term. Taking risk is the safe measure. So, like I said, it's a case of Tina. There is no alternative. You have to invest about 60% of your portfolio in stocks for your long-term goals. You can leave 40% in NPS, which is your default allocation. And this is my NPS portfolio. So I have been investing. So I have been part of the NPS since 2006 onwards. But the NPS, the government NPS was not ready. The NPS became ready only in 2010, early 2010. So after that, it was put into NPS, and you can see my NPS has grown at a very good return of 9.5%. And it has seen some ups and downs, but it has given very good returns. These people who are striking against NPS, saying bring back the government provident fund, they are. I'm very sorry to say they just don't know what they are talking about. So finally, I want to give you an illustration of retirement planning. And I want to tell you why you should not think about retirement in the conventional sense, like your parents did, where you think about a pension and you get that pension, and you have to curtail your savings and live a life, live a lesser life than what you did during employment. And so let me give you a very very simple illustration. Take a 30-year-old person. Let's say that person is earning 25,000. You can multiply it for, if your salary is 1 lakh, you can just multiply all these numbers by 5 times. It will be the same. So let us say the take home pay is 25,000. The expenses per month is 15,000. 60% of the take home pay is expenses. The person wants to retire by age 55. I have done these presentations for a corporate setup where in corporate, if you are in software, the retirement age in software is 45. Beyond that, people are saying suddenly the person will be there, they will vanish from the organization. But if you are in a non-IT kind of setup, maybe 50, 55. For us, it's a blessing that we have a retirement age of 60. But by age 55 we should be ready to retire, even if we are even if we can work for 5 years, we should have enough money to retire by 55. So this illustration is still valid for us. So let us say we can retire by age 55 and the person wants to live up to age 85. So I have now taken the expenses of 15,000 at age 30 and I have projected it forward. Every 12 years the expenses will double. I have taken 6% inflation. Every 12 years it will become double. 42 it will become 30,000. At age 54 it will become 60,000. Please recognize this is a projection of the expenses at that age of 30. I have not taken any additional expenses here into account. So now this is the salary. I have assumed that the salary increases about 5% a year. That's with DA and that the 3% increment. Yes, it will be 5% a year. By the way, many people in the central government organization think their salaries don't increase. That is not true. I have calculated salary increases. Our salary increases in the government organizations is much higher than corporate. Of course, because of this corona, things will be a little different. But to compensate for that, you will have your promotion and all that, so that will compensate that. I have not considered any promotions here, just to be on the safe side. So as long as the salary is increasing and as long as the orange line is above the blue line, your life is fine. You will manage because your salary is coming, your expenses are lower. You will manage. But age 55, the salary will drop to 0 because the person has retired. Now imagine a person getting a pension which is equal to the last drawn pay. This is the last drawn pay at age 55. If that last drawn pay is the pension for the lifetime, please recognize that the expenses don't stay steady. The expenses keep on increasing. After 5 years, the expenses will be more than pension. Please recognize one more time, I am projecting expenses at the age of 30 with no additional expenses. Even that, after 5 years, the pension will not be enough. And most people will get a pension which is equal to about half the last drawn pay or 1/3 the last drawn pay. So you can imagine how bad their situation will be. So this is the projection of the expenses until age 85, until the person is expected to live the full lifetime. You can see the expenses keep on increasing without any stop. So we need to plan our retirement in a different way. We need to think in terms of an income after retirement which is increasing every year. That is, this is my expenses after uh, projected expenses after retirement from age 55 to age 85. I want an income which matches this. I want an income from a corpus. So what I want is some corpus which is this amount, some amount here. I will take this corpus amount at age 55 and invest it. I will invest it in different baskets. I will draw a income from it every year, not a pension, a income which increases with inflation. I will draw an income from it every year, but I will keep investing it. But because of inflation, I will start drawing more and more, and the corpus will drop in value. By age 85, the corpus will become 0, and the corpus becomes 0, so I better die. That's the basic retirement plan. The question is, how much is this value of this dot here? and you can see that value is 2.5 crores. Please recognize we are talking about a 30-year-old person earning only how much did I say? 30,000 a month, isn't it? Something like that. So for that, it's 2.5 crores. Remember, I told you the third takeaway was being a multi-crorepati is not a dream, it is not a fantasy, it is a necessity. Now you know why it is a necessity. Even for a person earning such a small amount, just 25,000 a month, has to have 2.5 crores by the time they retire at the age of 55. So you can imagine, if you are earning 1 lakh a month, how much you need to be. Just multiply it by 5 times. So this person has to start investing today and slowly build that corpus, so that by age 55 the corpus value is retirement corpus value is about 2.5 crores. It seems impossible, but it's definitely possible. So again, the person is age 30, the take home pay is 25,000, the expenses per month is 15,000. Let us say the EPF or NPS contribution, which is the mandatory contribution, is 4,000 rupees from the salary. So the person has to take 9,000 from the take home pay and put it into an equity index mutual fund, which is 36% of the take home pay. So the total investment will be 9,000 for equity mutual fund plus 4,000 in NPS. NPS meaning NPS should not have any equity. The default government contribution is enough. So the total investment will be 13,000, and out of this 13,000, 60% you are putting into stocks. If you do this, you can assume a portfolio return of about 10%, and with some luck and management, that person will be able to achieve that 2.5 crores after 25 years. Please recognize 25 years is a lifetime. You can do a lot of things, and it may seem like a lot, but it's definitely achievable. People who are not used to stock market, they can start slowly, start with 500 rupees and get used to investing gradually. And also you'll have to worry about kids education, wedding, and so on down the line. For that, the inflation will be 10%. For retirement, we used only inflation of 6%, but for college expenses it will be much more. You have to plan along the same way. If there are any questions on this, I will ask. I will handle it. Otherwise, I don't want to get into so this is basically my last slide. I have talked about why you need to worry about inflation and why everybody has to plan for becoming a multi-crorepati. Again, if you go to the free ebooks, I have an ebook called Mutual Fund FAQ. This is like 100 questions FAQ format, which you can, for a beginner, and you can take this and start investing in mutual funds after you are able to go through as much as possible. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening. I will stop the sharing now. If there are any questions, please go ahead.
If anyone of you have questions, then either you can unmute yourself and ask directly, or just send in the chat box. I may address it to Mr. Pattu.
Hi, I have a question. May I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Pattu. It's nice to have you here. I have a small question that, say, I have an investment which is like quite a lot, but now I have to spend almost that amount into some other place, which is very essential also. So I have two options. Either I cash in all the invested and whatever the money has grown up to, and spend it, or I can take a personal loan and let the money grow in my investment and have it like that. And whenever I have more money from my salary, I will prepay the loan in personal loan, obviously. So, what do you think? What is the best way out of this?
See, when you say personal loan, please don't take that personal loan from banks or any other organizations. Take a personal loan from your relatives, or if possible, and pay them an interest which is equal to the FD interest. So the point I'm trying to make is that if your investment is doing well, and let's say it is getting a return of about 9%, 10%, as an example, your strategy of getting a loan will work as long as the EMI on that loan is about 6% or 7%, something like that. That you will not get from organizations, but you may be able to get it from relatives. That's a strategy. I mean, it may look a little, when I say borrow from relatives, it seems uncomfortable, but if it is possible, it's a very smart thing to do.
Okay, thank you.
Hi,
I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is related to real estate investment. Actually, I am right now living in government quarters. What you said is it is not good to invest in real estate or buy a house till the retirement.
Mm.
But what I am saying is we are paying HRA, which is equal to half the amount of EMI that we will pay for buying a house.
Mm.
Is it a good move, or we are just wasting the HRA money instead of investing?
See, if you are sure that if you are sure that you are going to live in that city for the rest of your life, then you can consider buying a house for uh, occupation. That is, you can, like you said, I don't want you say you don't want to lose out on HRA. You can vacate from your quarters, move into that house, and get that HRA and pay tax on it. That's what I am doing. Now you can vacate to that house, but don't think of that as an investment, because once you buy that house and you live in it, it becomes a consumable. That is definitely an option for you to consider. The only point I'm trying to make is that you can do it when you are at a stage where you've started your investments for your retirement. If you have other goals, like for example, if you have children, you can plan for their goals, start those investments, and then you can get into a home loan and pay that EMI and so on. That kind of a balance, if you have, it would be a better option.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Gaurav Bhaiya has a question. I'll read it out. He says that if we already have a LIC policy purchased by parents for us, should we surrender it or continue considering 8 years of payment has been already made?
The general thumb rule is that if less than half of the policy tenure is only elapsed, then you can surrender it. If more than half of the policy tenure has elapsed already, that is, for example, you have a 20-year policy and you've been paying premium for 12 years or 14 years, then then you can just continue paying the premium and finish the policy. But if you have only been paying premium for 8 years, 7 years, and so on, you can surrender and get rid of it. But the only problem is you have to emotionally be ready to handle the loss. You will lose at least one third, and you should be ready to handle that loss. Not many people are ready to do it. That's the problem. You have to overcome that, because if you agree that you need to invest in equity and invest in the stock markets, you will be losing that kind of money more or less every day after a few years. So you should get ready to, once you are emotionally ready to lose that money, you can go ahead and do it. But if less than half the policy tenure has elapsed. I see a question from Arpit. What is your asset allocation strategy? Like, how much in equity? So my recommendation for people who are in their 30s, 20s, and 30s, and so on, anywhere between 50 to 60% in equity is good. The rest can be in fixed income. You don't need anything else other than NPS. Maybe a little bit of PPF you can add. I would suggest don't have any gold in the investment. It's painful. Uh, for people in the 40s and 50s, it has to be a little lower. I also thank Rakesh Kumar for pointing out that the employer contribution is 14%. Thank you. I said it's 12%. It's 14%, which makes it much more better. Thank you, Rakesh. Amog has a question with what is the best place to park money lying around in the savings bank account? As you suggested, that money in bank account is avoidable. Um, what is the best place to park money? So first of all, when you say you want to park the money, you must first make sure all your goals are accounted for. You have listed your short term goals, you have listed your long term goals, and you have started investing for all of that. Once you have done all that, you can consider shifting that money to a liquid fund. For example, you can consider a fund like quantum liquid, or you can consider a fund like parak parik liquid fund. These are very safe liquid funds. You can get a little more return than your SB account. And also the best part is that uh, until you redeem, you don't have to pay tax on it. So that would be a simple option for everybody. So Akshay has a question: where should emergency fund be parked? The same answer I gave to Amog. You can just put it in a liquid fund. And Chandan Kumar says, what is your opinion about investing in debentures which pay out 9 to 10% on maturity? So a debenture is basically like it's almost like a basically like a stock investment. You should be careful about what kind of company you are buying. You have to do some kind of analysis on what kind of company, and the company, if the company doesn't have too much, if the company has too much debt, then you may be in trouble with the debenture. So be careful with it, and you'll have to don't my suggestion is, please do not chase after returns in fixed income. It's very very dangerous. Yeah, very see in I have showed you my NPS graph. How do you think I made that 9%? That is that NPS. My NPS has got your NPS also. Most of it is basically guilds. So a guild mutual fund, although it is it's very volatile and risky. Like NPS NAV is very volatile for us, but the principal won't be in danger because it's government of India, and you won't have big credit problems. Be careful with debentures; they can be risky.
Are there any more questions? Yeah, Amog has a question.
Is NPS a good investment for a corporate employee as well? That's very different. See, for a corporate employee, the equation changes completely, because the corporate employee for who is working in a company, they don't know whether they are going to be in the company the next day. In that situation, they will be given a pink slip, and where will they go? They'll go to some other company, and that company may not have NPS. So it is not as of now it is not transferable. And the problem with NPS is it has got a very horrible constraint. If you are 59 years old and if you exit from NPS, you have to buy a pension for 80% of your corpus. Whereas if you're 60 years old, then you have to only buy 40% of the corpus. So for corporate employees, most of them will never work until age 60, like people in ISRO or any other central government organization. So it is not a good investment for them. For them, EPF is a good investment. Forecast for the interest rate, Jaya Krishna says, forecast for interest rates for FD in 10 years. See, immediately interest rates will increase in the next year or maybe a little more, because inflation has already started increasing. Because the rate cycle, the rates will go down gradually, but it will be cyclic. Now the rates are like 6.5% or so in the established banks. Immediately I see that going up, but over the next 10 years, definitely interest rates for if India has to become a developed country, more developed than what it is in 10 years, then definitely interest rates should be low. It should be like 5.5%, 5% or so. That is even more very important question, because today LIC is giving you, they have this pension plans called Jeevan Akshay, Jeevan something something. They give you an annuity of 6% or 6.5% for a person who is 60 years old. Now, when you become 60 and when you go to LIC to buy a pension plan, imagine how much the annuity rate will be after 10 years, after 15 years, 20 years. It will be like 5.5%, 5%, and so on. It will be pathetically low. But inflation, our personal inflation, would still be about 6% after 10, 15 years, in my opinion. So that is the reason why you need to take risk right now when you are young and manage it better. That's a very good question. How do you compare the new tax scheme with respect to the old one? Which one is better? See, if you are young and you don't have any kind of home loan business, then taking the new tax scheme will be easier for you, beneficial for you. You will have more money in your hands, because already in your case, if you take the new tax scheme, your NPS, your employer contribution, will anyway be coming under tax deduction still in the new tax scheme. Only your contribution will not go under ATC, because there is no ATC in the new scheme. So if you will get more money in your hands, and if you can invest it more wisely, so for you the new tax scheme would be better. For people who are having home loans and all that, then they would want the old tax scheme, because they will want to get some tax benefit on the EMI they are paying. Now, Aman has a question. Should one try to time the market for investing in mutual funds or go for SIPs? Yet, as timing market will give much better returns, the timing is critical. Now, I have done extensive tests on this market timing. What I would suggest is go to FreeFinCal, and if you look at the category called market timing or tactical asset allocation, I have shown for several different market timing methods when they will win and when they will lose. You will see that they don't always give you better returns. They are very good in reducing risk, but it's not they won't give you better returns all the time. So if you know what you're doing, you can time the market, but it's not for everybody. Amok says, your opinion on corporate FDs as opposed to bank FDs. Please be very, very careful with corporate FDs. Corporate FDs, you can have some small allocation, but make sure they are AAA rated. They are very good FDs. Otherwise, you will be in big trouble. But corporate FDs, you have to pay tax as per slab. So please be careful. A liquid fund or a money market mutual fund, if you can learn more about it, that's always a much better option than a corporate FD, in my opinion. Vedant Raj wants to know. I think you're talking about sovereign gold bonds. See, let's say I have a girl child. Okay, I have a girl child, and in my community, as an example, in my community, if I want to marry the child, there will be a lot of gold involved. So I can use the sovereign gold bond scheme to accumulate gold uh, uh, without any kind of risk. Because if I use it as an investment, if I say sovereign gold bonds as an investment, then the returns I can get will be anything. Sometimes it will be positive, sometimes it will be negative. But if I use it with a purpose of only for future accumulation of gold, then it is completely risk free. There's no risk at all, because whatever gold price is after 8 years only, I will be paying for buying gold jewels. And also, sovereign gold bonds is 24 karat gold, whereas if you buy jewels in the market, it is 22 karat gold. So you will anyway, that there will be some broker, there will be some making charges, etc., etc. So if you want to buy gold for your daughter or for your son or whatever for a future use, then you can use sovereign gold bond without any risk. But if you use sovereign gold bonds for investing, that is for returns, then it is very, very risky. So Giant has a thing about ratings. Yes, you are right. It's a problem that's the problem. See, what Giant is saying is that you look at a corporate bond of AAA rating, you put money. Tomorrow the AAA rating can go down, and then you are in trouble. So it is a problem. It's integrity. I don't know whether we can comment on the integrity of rating agencies. The problem is that the rating agencies themselves don't know what's happening. Sometimes things can happen so fast. That's the problem. But your point of view is completely correct. Aditya Sardas talks about when to invest in the share market. Please don't worry about going up or down. Please, I have not talked about my personal life. I invest every month, whatever happens. I have been doing this for the past 12 years. When I started investing in 2008, I had a debt of minus 3 lakhs. That is, I had a debt of 3 lakhs. I had to pay it to my relative because I took a loan for my personal situation. Because I invested regularly, I was able to build a wealth and become financially independent in 10, 12 years. So please don't waste time worrying about when to invest. It can backfire. Akshay wants to know about investing in commodities market only for those who know what they are doing. Only for all this silver bullion, only for or the you have this exchange trading. Only those who know what they are doing can. It's not for everyone. Thank you. Those are very nice questions. Exit strategy for money invested in stocks. I have this is a very good question. Nobody talks about this. You must I see exit strategy. It's better to have an exit strategy related to your financial goal. Every year you check what is my target corpus, and where am I today, and gradually you should start reducing your equity asset allocation. See, I talked about an asset allocation of let's say you're 30-year-old, and I talked about a 50 to 60% stock asset allocation. Every 5 years you can start reducing that asset allocation by 10%. So gradually you can reduce and you can exit. So if you think in terms of asset allocation, then it becomes much more easier than in terms of individual stocks. I have several articles on this. I also have a video on this. You can check them. Swing trading. I'm not personally familiar with this, sir. But again, I'm fairly sure that just like the commodities market, it's only for people who are willing to lose money and learn. For long term, is debt mutual fund better than equity? No, you should have a mix of both. You have NPS. NPS is a mutual fund. You already have a debt mutual fund in NPS. You invest in that, which is anyway mandatory for you. Invest separately in equity. Your favorite investing or finance books? That's an interesting question. I don't read. I have not read the usual books on investing on finance. I have read a book called Physics of Wall Street. I have there's a book by Mandelbrot, Benoit Mandelbrot. I forget the name. My suggestion is please search for Free FinCal 5 books that will change your view of the stock markets. If you search for that, Free FinCal 5 books that will change your view of the stock markets, I would have listed the books there. I keep forgetting now. That will make you a fan of index investing. Yeah.
Okay, I think if there are no more questions, okay, one last question we can take. probably. Other questions can be addressed directly on sir's mail. So, yeah, sir, can you take this last question?
Yeah. So most of the asset allocation managers recommend to decrease the equity exposure in equity as you grow old and compensate with debt. But don't you think it's fundamentally wrong, as anyway your grandchildren will inherit this money, so it's better to continue with equity? That's a very good question, but it depends on how much you invest. For most people, the problem is investment. If you invest a lot of money, then you will be able to leave a part of it to your grandchildren to inherit it. But if you don't have enough, if you're not investing enough, then most of it will be used by you yourself. So it depends. So that's, if you are investing enough, you can leave it as inheritance. I have no view. I know nothing about Kautilya Arthashastra. I'm sorry. Maybe I should read about it. Is it a good strategy to diversify by investing in international mutual funds? It depends, sir. See, what has happened is over the last few years, the US market has dominated everything. Whatever happens, the US market is increasing. It's extremely overvalued, and it's a big problem today. Investing in international mutual funds has become investing in equity, and I don't know where it is going to end. It's The US market is extremely overvalued, so it can be very dangerous. It's quite risky, so you have to be very very careful doing that. Thank you for your time, and those are some very good questions. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And still, if there are more questions from others, then please see the chat box. And I have sent the mail of Dr. Pattu, so you can address them there. And now I would like to request Ananya Bhaiya, who is the chairman of IST Alumni Association Ahmedabad chapter, to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Prachi. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, I would like to thank Dr. Pattu for taking this session with us. Actually, I have been working for last 8 years, and when I joined, I was like, I didn't know about financing and all, and I picked up by my own and did some major mistakes. And if I would have got someone like you, I mean, session like you, it would have been uh, really nice, because some of the very crucial point you have taken here, that keeping emergency fund and keeping it simple. Sometimes because we are engineer, and like we like to get our brains worked out for things, so we think that we will make it complicated. We will structure something that will get a lot of out of it. So we make it complicated sometimes. And thanks that you have showed it. Keep it simple sometimes, and structuring our investments. Those are really well sorted guide for a newcomer who is joining the ISRO, and will be very helpful for our new joiners and for us also. There are many clues I have picked up from your presentations, and I think I will be following up you and your blog more for more inputs. Thanks a lot, sir, for your time. And after that, I will thank Gaurav for taking this effort to inviting Dr. Pattu and Prachi to arranging all this webinar kind of things. And she has been mailing you all to make you aware of this timing. And thanks all to you for joining us. I hope this session is of some help to you. If it is for some help, we will all be grateful. Thanks. Thanks all.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the time here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.